Hello, my sweet virtual friends. Welcome back. And yes, it's book study time. Oh my gosh, are you guys excited? I know that because of Winn-Dixie was just such a good book and such a favorite for a lot of us. I cannot wait to introduce to you the next book study we're going to be doing. But before we begin, I just want to give you guys a heads up that most of the week we may do 2 chapters, we may do 1 chapter, just depending on what's going on, just because we are getting a lot closer to STAR testing, and I want to make sure that you guys are as prepared as possible. So I don't want to overload you with too much book study stuff. So if it's a little bit easier and we have a little bit more of a focus on STAR throughout the week, we might just do 1 chapter, but if it's a little bit of an easier week, we might do 2 chapters. So don't be too disappointed if there's not 2 days of reading, but don't worry, we will definitely finish it before the end of the school year. Also, I need to say that this book's chapters are a little bit longer. So I am going to be just giving you a quick snippet before I start, and then I'm going to start reading just so that the video is not too long for you guys. But don't worry, it will be wonderful. I'm so excited. Are you guys ready? Cubone, are you ready? Yes, Cubone's back. He hasn't gotten to be in any of my videos lately, but he's here. All right. So, are you ready? Drum roll, please. Yes! So our next book study is A Wrinkle in Time. I am super excited to read this to you guys. It was a really close call between A Wrinkle in Time and the one and only Ivan. It was very, very close. It was just by one. It was crazy by one. So I definitely read through both of them and read the first couple chapters of both of them to see really which one we needed to do. I really feel like this one is going to pique y'all's interest a lot more just from getting to know y'all and seeing how y'all reacted to Because of Winn-Dixie. This is going to be definitely a whole lot different from Winn-Dixie, so that's also what I like. The one and only Ivan might have been a little too close to Winn-Dixie, so it'll be good for us to stretch away from it a little bit and just to get into something a little bit more interesting. Not that Because of Winn-Dixie wasn't, but this has got a whole lot going on and it's going to be such a fun read. But with that being said, you guys, just bear with me because the chapters, like I said, are a little bit longer. So the video might be a little bit longer. Don't worry though. Before we begin, I hope that you read the assignment because on your assignment, I have it where I asked you to do a before we read activity. So you should have went into the A Wrinkle in Time presentation and you should have filled out the before we read part of your assignment for today. So for your before we read, if you have not already done it, you were asked to explain something that has happened to you that is just like crazy or different, or is just, almost related to like a UFO sighting, like that kind of crazy. So that is basically what happens in this book, not the UFO thing, but there are so many unexpected things that happen in this book, and I feel like you guys are gonna be on the edge of your seats the whole time we're reading it. And so that was what I want you guys to focus on before we read, is think about a time where something so unexpected happens, something so different happens before we start reading, because that is literally what goes all on in this book. So if you have not done that, you need to pause and you need to go do that really quick, and then you may come back and have the during we read. And after I finish, I will briefly tell you a little bit about what is expected of you after we read. So you have 2 parts to your assignment today. All right, let's get started. So, A Wrinkle in Time, Chapter 1, Miss What's-It. So Because of Winn-Dixie, we did not have chapter titles. In this book, we do have chapter titles. So here we go. Chapter 1, Miss What's-It. It was a dark and stormy night. In her attic bedroom, Margaret Murray, wrapped in an old patchwork quilt, sat on the foot of her bed and watched the trees tossing in the frenzied lashing of the wind. Behind the trees, clouds scudded frantically across the sky. Every few moments, the moon ripped through them, creating wrath-like shadows that raced along the ground. The house shook. Wrapped in her quilt, Meg shook. She wasn't usually afraid of weather. It's not just the weather, she thought. It's the weather on top of everything else, on top of me, on top of Meg Murray doing everything wrong. School. School was all wrong. She'd been dropped down to the lowest section in her grade. That morning, one of her teachers had said crossly, "Really, Meg? I don't understand how a child with parents as brilliant as yours are supposed to be can be such a poor student. If you don't manage to do a little better, you'll have to stay back next year." During lunch, she'd roughed house a little to try to make herself feel better, and one of the girls said scornfully, "After all, Meg, we aren't grammar school kids anymore. Why do you always act like such a baby?" And on the way home from school, walking up the road with her arms full of books, one of the boys had said something about her. Dumb baby brother. At this, she'd thrown the books on the side of the road and tackled him with every ounce of her strength she had, and arrived home with her blouse torn and a big bruise under one eye. Sandy and Denny's, her 10-year-old twin brothers, who got home from school an hour earlier than she did, were disgusted. "Let us do the fighting when it's necessary," they told her. "A delinquent. That's what I am," she thought. Grimly, that's what they'll say by saying next. Not mother, but them. Everybody else. I wish father. But it was still not possible to think about her father without the danger of tears. Only her mother could talk about him in a natural way, saying, "When your father gets back." Gets back from where and when? Surely her mother must know what people were saying, must be aware of the smugly vicious gossip. Surely it must hurt her as it did Meg. But if it did, she gave no outward sign. Nothing ruffled the serenity of her expression. "Why can't I hide it too?" Meg thought. "Why do I always have to show everything?" The window rattled madly in the wind, and she pulled the quilt close about her. Curled up on one of her pillows, a gray fluff of kitten yawned. Showing its pink tongue, tucked its head under again and went back to sleep. Everybody was asleep. Everybody except Meg. Even Charles Wallace, the dumb baby brother, who had an uncanny way of knowing when she was awake and unhappy, and who would come so many nights tiptoeing up the attic stairs to her, even Charles Wallace was asleep. How could they sleep? All day on the radio there had been hurricane warnings. How could they leave her up in the attic in the rickety brass bed, knowing that the roof might be blown right off the house, and she tossed out into the wild night sky to land who knows where? Her shivering grew uncontrollably. "You asked to have the attic bedroom," she told herself savagely. "Mother let you have it because you're the oldest. It's a privilege, not a punishment." "Not during a hurricane. It isn't a privilege," she said aloud. Okay, let me pause. So currently our main character is named Meg Murray. She is currently sitting in her bedroom that is located at the attic in her house. And she is kind of freaking out a little bit right now. She is having a moment while there is a hurricane going on outside. And she is just contemplating the fact that everything is going wrong in her life. Let's keep going. She tossed the quilt down on the foot of the bed and stood up. The kitten stretched luxuriously and looked up at her with huge, innocent eyes. "Go back to sleep," Meg said. "Just be glad you're a kitten and not a monster like me." She looked at herself in the wardrobe mirror and made a horrible face, bearing a mouthful of teeth covered with braces. Automatically, she pushed her glasses into position, ran her fingers through her mouse-brown hair so that it stood wildly on end, and let out a sigh almost as noisy as the wind. The wide wooden floorboards were cold against her feet. Wind blew in the crevices about the window frame, in spite of the protection the storm sash was supposed to offer. She could hear wind howling in the chimneys. From all the way downstairs, she could hear Fortinbras, the big black dog, starting to bark. He must be frightened, too. What was he barking at? Fortinbras never barked without reason. Suddenly, she remembered that when she had gone to the post office, she picked up the mail she'd heard about, a tramp who was supposed to have stolen 12 sheets from Miss Buncombe. Buncombe, that's an interesting name. The constable's wife, Miss Buncombe. Miss Buncombe is the constable's wife. Thrown off by Miss Buncombe. They hadn't caught him, and maybe he was heading for the Murray's house right now, isolated on a back road as it was, and this time maybe he'd be after more than sheets. Meg hadn't paid much attention to the talk about the tramp at the time, because the postmistress, with a sugary smile, had asked if she'd heard from her father lately. She left her little room and made her way through the shadows of the main attic, bumping against the ping-pong table. Now I'll have a bruise on my hip on top of everything else, she thought. Next, she walked into her old doll's house. Charles Wallace's rocking horse, the twins' electric trains. Why must everything happen to me? She demanded of a large teddy bear. At the foot of the attic stairs, she stood still and listened. Not a sound from Charles Wallace's room on the right. On the left, in her parents' room, not a rustle from her mother, sleeping alone in the great double bed. She tiptoed down the hall and into the twins' room, pushing again at her glasses as though they could help her to see better in the dark. Denny's was snoring. Sandy murmured something about baseball and subsided. The twins didn't have any problems. They weren't great students, but they weren't bad ones either. They were perfectly content with a succession of B's and an occasional A or C. They were strong and fast runners and good at games. And when cracks were made about anybody in the Murray family, they weren't made about Sandy and Denny's. She left the twins' room and went downstairs. Avoiding the creaking seventh step, Fortinbras had stopped barking. It wasn't the tramp this time, then. Fort would go on barking if anybody was around. But suppose the tramp does come. Suppose he has a knife. Nobody lives near enough to hear if we scream and screamed and screamed. Nobody'd care anyhow. I don't know why every time I start reading, I start yawning. I'll make myself some cocoa, she decided. That'll cheer me up, and if the roof blows off, at least I won't go with it. I won't go off with it. Well, that's a good thought. In the kitchen, a light was already on, and Charles Wallace was sitting at the table drinking milk and eating bread and jam. He looked very small and vulnerable, sitting there alone in the big old-fashioned kitchen. A blond little boy in faded blue Dr. Denton's, his feet swinging a good 6 inches above the floor. Hi, he said cheerfully. I've been waiting for you. From under the table where he was lying at Charles's feet, hoping for a crumb or two, Fortinbras raised his slender dark head in greeting to Meg, and his tail thumped against the floor. Fortinbras had arrived on their doorstep, a half-grown puppy, scrawny and abandoned, one winter night. He was Meg's father, had decided. Part Llewellyn setter and part greyhound, and he had a slender dark beauty that was all his own. Why didn't you come up to the attic? Meg asked her brother, speaking as though he were at least her age. I've been scared stiff. Too windy up in that attic of yours, the little boy said. I knew you'd be down. I put some milk on the stove for you. It ought to be hot by now. How did Charles Wallace always know about her? How could he always tell? He never knew or seemed to care what Denny's or Sandy were thinking. It was his mother's mind and Meg's that he probed with frightening accuracy. Was it because people were a little afraid of him that they whispered about the Murray's youngest child, who was rumored to be not quite bright? I've heard that clever people often have subnormal children. Meg had once overheard. The two boys seemed to be nice, regular children, but the unattractive girl and that baby boy certainly aren't all there. It was true that Charles Wallace seldom spoke when anybody was around, so that many people thought he'd never learn to talk, and it was true that he hadn't talked at all until he was almost 4. Meg would turn white with fury when people looked at him and clucked, shaking their heads sadly. "Don't worry about Charles Wallace, Meg," her father had once told her. Meg remembered it very clearly because it was shortly before he went away. "There's nothing the matter with his mind. He just does things in his own way and in his own time." I'm so sorry, you guys. Here, let me get a drink. Hold on. Here we go. All right. "I don't want him to grow up to be dumb like me," Meg had said. "Oh, my darling, you're not dumb," her father answered. "You're like Charles Wallace. Your development has to go at its own pace. It doesn't just happen to be the usual place." "How do you know?" Meg had demanded. "How do you know I'm not dumb? Isn't it just because you love me?" "I love you, but that's not what tells me. Mother and I've given you a number of tests, you know." Yes, that was true. Meg had realized that some of the games her parents played with her were tests of some kind, and that there had been more for her and Charles Wallace than for the twins. "IQ tests, you mean?" "Yes, some of them." "Is my IQ okay?" "More than okay." "What is it?" "That I'm not going to tell you, but it assures me that both you and Charles Wallace will be able to do pretty much whatever you like when you grow up to yourselves. You just wait till Charles Wallace starts to talk. You'll see." How right he had been about that. He himself had left before Charles Wallace began to speak, suddenly with none of the usual baby preliminaries, using entire sentences. How proud he would have been. "You'd better check the milk," Charles Wallace said to Meg now, his diction clearer and cleaner than that of many and most 5-year-olds. "You know you don't like it when it gets a skin on top." "You put in more than twice enough milk." Meg peered into the saucepan. Charles Wallace nodded serenely. "I thought Mother might like some." "I might like what?" a voice said, and there was their mother standing in the doorway. "Cocoa," Charles Wallace said. "Would you like a liverwurst and cream cheese sandwich? I'll be happy to make you one." "That would be lovely," Miss Murray said, "but I can make it myself if you're busy." "No trouble at all." Charles Wallace slid down from his chair and trotted over to the refrigerator, his pajamaed feet padding softly as a kitten. "How about you, Meg?" he said. "Sandwich?" "Yes, please," she said, "but not liverwurst. Do we have any tomatoes?" Charles Wallace peered into the crisper. "One. All right, if I use it on Meg, Mother." "To what better use could it be put?" Miss Murray smiled. "But not so loud, please, Charles. That is, unless you want the twins downstairs, too." "Let's be exclusive," Charles Wallace said. "That's my new word for the day. Impressive, isn't it?" Miss Murray sighed. "Meg, come let me look at that bruise." Meg knelt at her mother's feet. The warmth and light of the kitchen had relaxed her so that her attic fears were gone. The cocoa steamed fragrantly in the saucepan. The curtains, red with a blue and green geometrical pattern, were drawn and seemed to reflect their cheerfulness throughout the room. The furnace purred like a great sleepy animal. The lights glowed with steady radiance outside, alone in the dark, and the wind still battered against the house, but the angry power that had frightened Meg while she was alone in the attic was subdued by the familiar comfort of the kitchen. Underneath Miss Murray's chair, Fortinbras let out a contented sigh. Miss Murray gently touched Meg's bruised cheek. Meg looked up at her mother, half in loving admiration, half in sullen resentment. It was not an advantage to have a mother who was a scientist and a beauty as well. Miss Murray's flaming red hair, creamy skin, and violet eyes with Long dark lashes seemed even more spectacular in comparison with Meg's outrageous plainness. Meg's hair had been passable as long as she wore it tidily in braids. When she went into high school, it was cut, and now she and her mother struggled with putting it up. But one side would come out curly and the other straight, so that she looked even plainer than before. You don't know the meaning of moderation, do you, my darling? Miss Murray asked. A happy medium is something I wonder if you'll ever learn. That's a nasty bruise the Henderson boy gave you. By the way, shortly after you'd gone to bed, his mother called up to complain about how badly you'd hurt him. I told her that since he's a year older and at least 25 pounds heavier than you are, I thought I was the one who ought to be doing the complaining. But she seemed to think it was all your fault. I suppose that depends on how you look at it, Meg said. Usually, no matter what happens, people think it's my fault, even if I have nothing to do with it at all. But I'm sorry I tried to fight him. It's just been an awful week, and I'm full of bad feeling. Miss Murray stroked Meg's shaggy head. Do you know why? I hate being an oddball, Meg said. It's hard on Sandy and Denny's, too. I don't know if they're really like everybody else or if they're just able to pretend they are. I try to pretend, but it isn't any help. You're too much straightforward to be able to pretend to be what you aren't, Miss Murray said. I'm sorry, Meglet. Maybe if Father were here, he could help you, but I don't think I can do anything till you've managed to plow through some more times. Then things will be easier for you, but that isn't much help right now, is it? Maybe if I weren't so repulsive looking. Maybe if I were pretty like you. Mother's not a bit pretty. She's beautiful, Charles Wallace announced, slicing liverwurst. Therefore, I bet she was awful at your age. How right you are, Miss Murray said. Just give yourself time, Meg. Lettuce on your sandwich, Mother? Charles Wallace asked. No, thank you. He cut the sandwich into sections, put it on a plate, and set it in front of his mother. Yours'll be along in just a minute, Meg. I think I'll talk to Miss Watsit about you. Who's Miss Watsit? Meg asked. I think I want to be exclusive about her for a while, Charles Wallace said. Onion salt? Yes, please. What's Miss Watsit stand for? Miss Murray asked. That's her name, Charles Wallace answered. You know, the old shingled house back in the woods that the kids won't go near because they say it's haunted? That's where they live. They? Miss Watsit and her two friends. I was out with Fortinbras a couple of days ago. You and the twins were at school. Meg, we walked into the woods and suddenly he took off after a squirrel and I took off after him and we ended up by the haunted house. So I met them by accident, as you might say. But nobody lives there, Meg said. Miss Watson and her friends do. They're very enjoyable. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Miss Murray asked. And you know you're not supposed to go off our property without permission, Charles. I know, Charles said. That's one reason I didn't tell you. I just rushed after Fortinbras without thinking, and then I decided, well, I'd better save them from an emergency anyhow. A fresh gust of wind took the house and shook it, and suddenly the rain began to lash against the windows. I don't think I like the wind, Meg said nervously. We'll lose some shingles off the roof, that's certain, Miss Murray said. Told you, these are longer chapters. I gotta keep hydrated. Miss Murray said, but this house has stood for almost 200 years, and I think it will last a little longer. There's been many a high wind up on this hill, but this hurricane, Meg wailed. The radio kept saying it was a hurricane. It's October, Miss Murray told her. They've been storms in October before. As Charles Wallace gave Meg her sandwich, Fortinbras came out from under the table. He gave a long, low growl, and they could see the dark fur slowly rising on his back. Meg felt her own skin prickle. What's wrong? She asked anxiously. Fortinbras stared at the door that opened into Miss Murray's laboratory, which was in the old stone dairy right off the kitchen. Sorry, it threw me off there to see the word Old Stone Dairy. Beyond the lab, a pantry led outdoors. Through Miss Murray had done her best to train the family to come into the house through the garage door or the front door and not through the garage door toward which Fortinbras was growling. You didn't leave any nasty smelling chemicals cooking over a Bunsen burner, did you, Mother? Charles Wallace asked. Miss Murray stood up. No, but I think I'd better go see what's upsetting for anyhow. It's the tramp. I'm sure it's the tramp, Meg said. What tramp? Charles asked. They were saying at the post office this afternoon that a tramp stole all Miss Buncombe's sheets. We'd better sit on the pillowcases then, Miss Murray said lightly. I don't think even a tramp would be out on a night like this, Meg. But that's probably why he is out, Meg will, trying to find a place not to be out. In which case, I'll offer him the barn till morning. Miss Murray went briskly to the door. I'll go with you. Meg's voice was shrill. No, Meg, you stay with Charles and eat your sandwich. Eat! Meg exclaimed as Miss Murray went out through the lab. How does she expect me to eat? Mother can take care of herself, Charles said. Physically, that is. But he sat in his father's chair at the table and his legs kicked at the rungs, and Charles Wallace, unlike most small children, had the ability to sit still. After a few moments that seemed like forever to Meg, Miss Murray came back in, holding the door open for, was it a tramp? It seemed small for Meg's idea of a tramp. The age or gender was impossible to tell, for it was completely bundled up in clothes. Several scarves of assorted colors were tied about the head, and a man's felt hat perched atop. A shocking peaked stole was knotted about a rough overcoat, and black rubber boots covered the feet. Miss What's-it? Charles said, suspiciously excited. What are you doing here? And at this time of night, too. Now, don't you be worried, my honey. A voice emerged from among the turned coat collar. Stole scarves and hat in a voice like an unoiled gate, but somehow not unpleasant. Miss, What's-it? Says she lost her way, Miss Murray said. Would you care for some hot chocolate, Miss What's-it? Charmed, I'm sure, Miss What's-it answered, taking off the hat and the stole. It isn't so much that I lost my way as that I got blown off course. And when I realized that I was at little Charles Wallace's house, I thought I'd just come in and rest a bit before proceeding on my way. How did you know this was Charles Wallace's house? Meg asked. By the smell. Miss What's-it untied a blue and green paisley scarf in a red and yellow flowered print, a gold Liberty print, a red and black bandana. Under all this, a sparse quantity of grayish hair was tied in a small but tidy knot on top of her head. Her eyes were bright, her nose a round, soft bulb, her mouth puckered like an autumn apple. My, but it's lovely and warm in here, she said. Do sit down. Miss Murray indicated a chair. Would you like a sandwich, Miss What's-it? I've had liverwurst and cream cheese. Charles has had bread and jam, and Meg lettuce and tomato. Now let me see, Miss What's-it pondered. I'm passionately fond of Russian caviar. You peaked, Charles cried. We're saving that for Mother's birthday, and you can't have any. Miss What's-it gave a deep and pathetic sigh. No, Charles said. Now you mustn't give in to her, Mother, or I shall be very angry. How about tuna fish salad? All right, Miss What's-it said meekly. I'll fix it, Meg offered, going to the pantry for a can of tuna fish. For crying out loud, she thought. This old woman comes barging in on us in the middle of the night, and Mother takes it as though there weren't any peculiar about it at all. I'll bet she is the tramp. I'll bet she did steal those sheets, and she's certainly no one Charles Wallace ought to be friends with, especially when he won't even talk to ordinary people. I've only been in the neighborhood a short time, Miss Watson was saying as Meg switched off the pantry light and came back to the kitchen with the tuna fish. And I didn't think I was going to like the neighbors at all until dear little Charles came over with his dog. Miss Watson, Charles Wallace demanded severely, why did you take Miss Buncombe's sheets? Well, I needed them, Charles dear. You must return them at once. But Charles dear, I can't. I've used them. It was very wrong of you, Charles Wallace scolded. If you needed sheets that badly, you should have asked me. Miss Watson shook her head and clucked. You can't spare any sheets, Miss Buncombe can. Meg cut up some celery and mixed it in with the tuna. After a moment's hesitation, she opened the refrigerator door and brought out a jar of little sweet pickles. Though why I'm doing it for her, I don't know, she thought as she cut them up. I don't trust her one bit. Tell your sister I'm all right, Miss Whatsit said to Charles. Tell her my intentions are good. The road to hell's paved with good intentions, Charles imitated. My, but isn't he cunning? Miss Whatsit beamed at him fondly. It's lucky he has someone to understand him. But I'm afraid he doesn't, Miss Murray said. None of us is quite up to Charles. But at least you aren't trying to squash him down. Miss Watson nodded her head vigorously. You're letting him be himself. That's a good line. Oh, that's good. We like that. We like when people let us be ourselves. Here's your sandwich, Meg. Meg said, bringing it to Miss Whatsit. Do you mind if I take off my boots before I eat? Miss Whatsit asked, picking up the sandwich. Nevertheless, listen. She moved her feet up and down in her boots, and they could hear water squelching. My toes are ever so damp. The trouble is that these boots are a mite too tight for me, and I can never take them off by myself. I'll help you, Charles offered. Not you. You're not strong enough. I'll help. Miss Murray squatted at Miss Watsit's feet, yanking one slick boot. When the boot came off, it came suddenly. Miss Murray sat down with a thump. Miss Watsit went tumbling backward with the chair onto the floor, sandwich held high in one old claw. Yes, that said one old claw. Ooh. The water poured out of the boot and ran over the floor and the big braided rug. Oh, dearie me, Miss Watson said, lying on her back in the overturned chair, her feet in the air. One in a red and white striped sock, the other still booted. Miss Murray got to her feet. Are you all right, Miss Watson? If you have some liniment, I'll put it on my dignity, Miss Watson said, still supreme. I think it's sprained. A little oil of cloves mixed well with garlic is rather good. And she took a large bite of her sandwich. Do please get up, Charles said. I don't like to see you lying there that way. You're carrying things too far. Excuse me. I got excited and inhaled too quickly. Have you ever tried to get to your feet with sprained dignity? But Miss Whatsit scrambled up, righted the chair, and then sat back down on the floor. The booted foot stuck out in front of her and took another bite. She moved with great quick agility for such an old woman. At least Meg was reasonably sure that she was an old woman, and a very old woman at that. Miss Whatsit, her mouth full, ordered Miss Murray, Now, please, I'm already down. I'm just trying to do her voice. I'm already, like, with a mouthful. I'm already down. Quite calmly, as though this old woman and her boots were nothing out of the ordinary, Miss Murray pulled until the second boot relinquished the foot. This foot was covered with a blue and gray argyle sock. And Miss Whatsit sat there, wriggling her toes, contentedly finishing her sandwich before scrambling to her feet. "Ah," she said, "that's ever so much better," and took both boots and shook them out over the sink. "My stomach is full, and I'm warm inside and out. It's time I went home." "Don't you think you'd better stay till morning?" Miss Murray asked. "Oh, thank you, dearie, but there's so much to do, I just can't waste time sitting about frivoling. It's much too wild a night to travel in." "Wild nights are my glory," Miss Watson said. "I just got caught in a downdraft and blown off course." "Well, at least till your socks are dry." "Wet socks don't bother me. I just didn't like the water squishing around in my boots." "Now, don't worry about me, lamb." Lamb was not a word one would ordinarily think of calling Miss Murray. "I shall just sit down for a moment and pop on my boots, and then I'll be on my way." Oh my gosh. Let me go turn the light on. Gotta love that. I'm trying to make this a quick video, guys. I told you these chapters were much longer. We got about 2 more pages. "I shall just sit down for a moment and pop on my boots, and then I'll be on my way. Speaking of ways, Pet, by the way, there is such a thing as a tesseract." Miss Murray went very white, and with one hand reached backward and clutched at a chair for support. Her voice trembled. "What did you say?" Miss Watson tugged at her second boot. "I said," she grunted, shoving her foot down, there is such a thing as a tesseract." Her foot went down into the boot, and grabbing shawls, scarves, and a hat, she hustled out the door. Miss Murray stayed very still, making no move to help the old woman. As the door opened, Fortinbras streaked in, panting, wet and shiny as a seal. He looked at Miss Murray and whined. The door slammed. "Mother, what's the matter?" Meg cried. "What did she say? What is it?" "The tesseract," Miss Murray whispered. "What did she mean? How could she have known?" Okay, we didn't have 2 more pages. We were done. Okay, so, whoo, that was a lot. Wow. So in chapter 1, we are meeting Meg and her family. We have Meg, we have Miss Murray, we have Charles Wallace, we have Sandy and Denny's, and then we also have Miss Whatsit. So in the beginning, it's really throughout the whole entire chapter, there is a hurricane happening at the Murray household, and Meg is just having a moment. She's just hating the world. She is a typical teenager. She hates the world right now. She's very protective over her siblings, is what we've known. She's protective over her mom. She feels like she can't do anything right. And so Meg, Miss Murray, and Charles Wallace are having a sweet little moment in the kitchen when they meet Miss Whatsit, who is just a very interesting woman at that. And she left Miss Murray with the thought of something called a tesseract. I'm very interested to see what happens with this. I don't think it's a tesseract like in the Avengers movie, but very interesting. Very interesting that is what she left her with. Huge cliffhanger there. All right. So I know that these chapters are a little bit longer, you guys, but they have so much detail in the describing what's going on so that you can visually see it. So just bear with me, you guys, as we keep getting through this book. I might have to start divvying up the chapters themselves. I might have to do like half of one chapter and then the rest of the half another day, just so that it's a little bit easier for you guys. But for your assignment today, you had the pre-reading, you had watching the actual read aloud, and then after your reading, you guys are going to be analyzing Meg. You're going to be analyzing our main character. So, and because of Winn-Dixie, Opal was our main character, but now we have a new main character, and her name is Meg Murray. She has a whole big family. They kept alluding to the fact that her father is missing, so that is going to be something very, very interesting when we get there. If we get there, you never know. Just like how because of Winn-Dixie, we did not have the mom and we never really got to her, so I wonder if we're going to get to this dad being gone. So go back to the presentation and fill in the character portion on what you think about Meg and just answer the questions that it has on there. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. You know where to find me. All right, bye you guys. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter. Bye.